All right. Okay, so this video is going to be for a different way that you can think about programming and the ways that we use it in our everyday language. Um, this isn't a direct like one-to-one comparison. This is kind of like a general abstract gist of ways that you can think about it. And so, like for variable, for instance, if I ask like, "Hey, what's for dinner?" and the reply was meatloaf, dinner equals meatloaf in this instance. Um, and then you could also do the flip of it for like, well, how many should I get? And then the answer is 12. It's like the way that those questions are asked and those answers make sense. Now, if I said, well, how many should I get? And then the answer was meatloaf, it's like, well, that doesn't make sense because the intent of the question was to get a number. So, and for the other one, what's for dinner? And I said 12. It's like that also doesn't make sense because I was expecting like a word or a string. And so that shows like the two different ways for a variable being defined as a string or a numeric value. And just like with the way that certain things are formatted within programming, it makes sense to have certain ways to reply to that. Um, let's see. Mm-mm-mm. I guess like two other examples that I thought of is like, well, how many soaps do we need? And the answer would be computer. It's like that doesn't make sense because like that's not the kind of data, that's not the information that you were expecting to get. And so like there's a difference between a string and a number, and when you want to do something with that information, like it's impossible to if you have the wrong stored data in that. Because like what can you do with like how many should I get for Monday, or how many should I get for the week, and how many should I get for every day. It's just like, well, I need one for every day, and then you could times that by 7 because 7 days in a week, and then you can get the answer for how many you need in a week. And so like you can do stuff with information if it's given to you in the right proper way, where it's like, if well, how many should I get for the day? Well, it's like, well, computer, and it's like you can try to times computer by 7. That just doesn't make any sense. Um, and so for lists, I think it's easiest to think about like as like a normal grocery list, um, and like how many items are on there. And I don't know. To me, it just putting it into like one item after another. Whereas like maybe like a dictionary in Python would be like, I'm thinking of like a grocery list, but then also the quantities that you want for each item. So it's like when you have your grocery list and you need like maybe like 12 sodas. It's like, well, in your list you have sodas, and then you have the assigned value or the key with it for it to be 12. And so when you go get your soda, you're really focused on the 12 as well. I thought a couple examples for the like the if else statements. And so like if you receive a phone call, then answer. If else you missed a phone call, maybe call back. And then else maybe you need to make a phone call. And so uh, if each that one, of course, as we know, if the conditional statement is true, then you perform that action. If it's not true, you go to the next thing to see if you can perform an action there if that conditional statement is true. So well, if you receive a phone call, so if you're receiving a phone call, you answer. Else if, and so it just goes over different scenarios where a conditional statement might be true, so you can get a specific kind of response. And so uh, let's see. I think there's also like this one might be a little more applicable. Like if the light is green, then go. If else the light is yellow, well then maybe slow down and stop. Else, uh, you need to stop because the only other option there is for it to be a red light. And so I don't need a else if the light is red because there's only three possible scenarios and I already covered two. So the only other possible solution is that the light is red. The same thing kind of goes true for while loops, and so it's like while as long as the statement is true, perform this task. And so it's like, well, while time does not equal, let's see, quitting time, work. And so as long as it is part of your, as long as it is your 9 to 5, you should be working. And then like, well, when time is quitting time, then you no longer work. And so when that statement no longer becomes true, you end that while loop. It's like, while you're hungry, eat. And so when you're not hungry anymore, you stop eating. And so you stop performing that task that you assigned to do when that conditional statement is true. Um, or like so then for for loops, it's the same thing with the while loop, just a little bit different. And so for grade does not equal A, what I have to do is stay home and study, or like maybe give up my weekends, stay home and study. And so then when I bring my grade up to an A, then I no longer need to sacrifice my weekends and maybe I can go out. And so we can see in these scenarios that it's like when that condition statement is no longer true, then you stop performing that task. Or if it's never true, you just never do the task. And then the last thing I think I want to cover is functions. And so I was thinking about, well, like a function that you have for taking out the trash or taking something out to recycling. This is kind of really finite like example, but it's like if you ask somebody to go take out the trash, or if you need to go take out the trash, you have a specific set form of, or a specific set of things that you do every time you do that, every time you take out the trash. And so maybe you, like if I'm going to perform the function, take out the recycling, I would, ensure box is empty, grab empty box, open front door, go down to recycling, recycle empty box, return back home, and then like my function would be done and complete. And so maybe it exits. And not only can I do that with like maybe a cereal box, I could also perform that same function with, like a cardboard box, or I could perform a similar function about the trash. And so I think here we can see it's like there's always going to be, it's going to be the same things that are operating on whatever you're going to be taking out to the trash, or to the recycling, where that item that you're going to be throwing away, recycling, is going to be the argument that's taken in by the function. But there's always going to be, you're going to be doing the exact same thing for, maybe taking out the trash, like ensure that it's full, open the door, go down, throw it away, come back upstairs, done. And so I think that's a good way to think about the function, is like it's reiteratable, you can do it again and again, and it's going to be the same thing every time, even if you use it with different items. Let's see. I guess maybe you could also do, let's see. Like maybe a function for doing homework. And so if I'm going to perform the function, do my homework, that means like clear off my desk, pull out my study material, and maybe I do study for math. And so what that means inside my function is that I'm going to be doing the same thing for studying, but I'm going to make it directly towards or applicable for my math class. And then that would, like my math class might be the argument taken in by this function, whereas maybe when I put in like a different class, like maybe my computers class, then I can focus on pulling that information, like those books, the educational content out. Let's see. I was thinking about like, well, if this is true, perform a function. And so like, let's see, if the trash or if the recycling, if the trash is full, perform takeout trash. And so then, if the trash is full, so when that statement is true, I like tie up the trash bag and perform that function, and that will be true every time, and that's gonna happen. So by having those functions, it might save writing a lot of code, and so that's why there's utility in writing. It's like the function as it's gonna be the same thing every time. I'm gonna write the same lines, and maybe if I'm gonna code my schedule for like a week, maybe I need to take out the trash 3 times. And so if I need to have 15 lines of code, I'd rather just do 15 lines of code once, and then maybe some, then call that argument 3 times, rather than have to write those 15 lines of code out every time. And so there's some utility in function, and like it's embedded in our behavior when we use our these functions. We already do them automatically. Maybe for driving, there's a certain set function for every task, and so this is a lot more complex, but a really useful idea and tool when it comes to using it for computer programming, because it can save us a lot of time, energy, and effort whenever we need to have something done. Is that we can make it into a function and not have to redo all these lines of code that we've already written, that we can just call the function again. So that's about all that I had. I know I didn't put enough time into this and making this educational content or think of good enough examples, but I'm finally getting it done.